Yeah, yeah, mine.
I can reduce mine easily. So take 5 off mine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That would be great. I would actually adjust mine.
And
Saeed,
I can more too. Like you said, if we get another submission, but let's take 5 off now to make room for the breaks, and we can adjust more if more people come in.
Saeed,
Okay.
what is
Okay.
the scheduled finish time?
Sorry.
What is the
It's
scheduled
like
finish
4:45.
time?
Let's do it 5 o'clock.
Five.
Hmm.
Or we can actually stretch it a little, right?
We can
Maybe
stretch
to
it to
five ten.
5:15 or 5, yeah, because it's yeah, but we
Okay.
but definitely I can take 5 minutes.
Okay.
So
So
Saeed,
we're
can you check the sound because I think it works now.
let me see. But yes, I have the sound, but it is very loud.
We gotta cut that. Okay.
I'm muting my
Give a
the
thumbs up.
headset so that
Saeed, give a thumbs up if you can hear us.
If you can hear it, thumbs up.
Can you hear it? Thumbs up.
Can you hear me? I don't know what to do to this.
Your cell phone isn't broadcasting, is it?
No.
So it's not. Something's creating a loop. And my guess is between these two machines.
This headphone, it gives me this.
There should be is there a microphone, headphone, and speaker?
This one and this one.
Where?
This I can adjust.
Wait, that's headphone.
Yeah,
Where's the speaker? Like the microphone speaker.
I don't see it. So
Oh, okay.
Saeed,
Turn off.
when I put it on camera, it gets the voice.
hello, Christine.
Okay, sorry, I've muted us on this side
Okay.
so that you
So
don't get confused with the
yeah,
voices.
I could hear you, but the voice was too low.
He needs to have, if he's talking to us, he needs to have
I
his
can
sound
hear
off.
that actually. So, but the problem is that the voice is too loud. That's the only problem.
What does that sound?
because yeah. Do you hear us, Said? It has nothing to do with him, you know. Testing this. Do you hear us now? Do you hear us now? Hello? Hello? I think I think we have a voice. But once I raise it, now there is no echo.
In the future, Christine, I think if we want to hear Saeed, someone should have a headphone on in here that hears him, so that that sound doesn't come back.
But even we muted everything, we still.
Are getting feedback?
Oh, he thinks you need to mute your laptop. No? What does that matter?
How to mute my laptop?
Mute your speakers, maybe.
So it's not taking. Oh, your own speakers, not the microphone, but the speakers.
Do you hear us now?
And increase
Oh.
the sound level.
How about now? It looks fine.
Okay.
I think so.
So take it on faith that we're talking.
Does he have a feedback? Think.
I'm waiting for him to continue. He said perfect. Okay. Great.
Rolling? Okay. Let me put it where it used to be. So we stopped at 9, correct?
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So thanks everyone for returning to the CLM for this week. This week we're going to be continuing the discussion on the principles of systems as stated by Jay Forrester. For those who weren't here last week, there should be a audio.
Sorry, it says increase at the higher level.
Those who weren't here last week, there should be an audio of the first half of this discussion. There was also a PDF sent out. This PDF is distilled elements from Jay Forrester's book. That is the Principles of Systems from 1968. And last week we went through, just to quickly, if you have that PDF in front of you, I think Rafat's presenting it on the screen. We went through section 3, which was sort of an abstract discussion of what are abstract models, the validity of models and the simulation solutions. Then they talked about the decisions and feedback loops and the structural elements of these models in section 4. And then section 6, we got a little bit into dimensional equality and length of solution interval. What all of these are sort of the physics, the natural laws of system dynamic simulations. And what we found in discussion with Professor Saeed was that some of these are still very relevant and valid today. Others have been superseded.
There's up to now?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Because there's a delay.
How about now?
We're testing the sound. Pause for tester.
Sorry.
Are we good? Saeed, give a thumbs up.
It is fast.
Okay. So continuing, where we left off was at the end of the length of the solution interval and the DT time. It was interesting. I actually submitted some papers on ISIS over the weekend to the conference, and on one of them I had an interval integration error. And by switching the DT integration method from Euler to RK4 auto, it actually smoothed it out very much. It wasn't perfect, but it really helped fix it. But you can also tell the computational muscle that takes, because the simulation itself took now 45 seconds to a minute to run, where it used to be instantaneous. So we're going to begin today on Principle 9 and the elements. The skip from 6 to 9, I'm not sure why, but we'll take it on faith that there's Principle 9.1. Listed as auxiliary variables are only in the information links. So in the information links, what we mean by those is when you have auxiliaries that are linked auxiliary to auxiliary, those should not necessarily be in the level itself. And the reason why that auxiliary information is because that's actually, if you took the rate, because remember, there's only rates and flows of change and stocks and level. There's only so everything that's not a stock must be part of the equation of a rate or flow of change. However, for simplicity, I think what's going on here is we've subdivided out a complex equation that determines a rate of flow and divided it into auxiliaries that make it more easily depictable of what's going on. So again, if we had a flow of workers being hired, rate of change of hiring and firing, and the stock was workers, on auxiliary in that information might be desired workers, it might be time to hire workers. These are all things that if you included it in just an analytical equation, you written it out, would be one line of information, but we break it out visually to show that information. And let me know if anyone's got questions online. The levels exist in conservative subsystems. This is Principle 9.2. Here Forrester's talking about that in all levels are conserved quantities. They can only be changed by moving the contents between levels or to or from a source sink. What that means is if all of your information or items and levels come from a source at the start of the model or initialized in the start of the model, you can't simply have those items go out to nowhere. You can't have a level drop by 10 and not have it go somewhere. It's got to either go out of an exit flow to another stock where it might be converted. It may have to go to a sink, which is a cloud that just says the stock is outside the boundaries of the model. But this concept of conservation of subsystems is very key to the validity of the models. So within also these subsystems, Forrester talks about having the same units within the conservative subsystems. So he's saying within any subsystem of conserved flows, all levels have the same units of measures, all rates are measured in those same units divided by time. So this is something that was kind of new to me, as I'm used to having stocks that have different units of measure. And I'm wondering here if we can talk with Rafat and Christine about whether we think here he's talking about a subsystem of stocks within a model that are identified by having the same units of measure. Because this is sort of the first indication I've seen that all stocks in the same subsystem should have the same unit of measure.
So we have 9-3.
Yep.
Within any subsystem, all levels have the same.
Right. So in some subsystems I've seen where you have different units of measure. It may be the hiring, the workforce policy includes information that's inventory, so the units of measure are widgets. But it also, the aim of it is to regulate workers, so the unit of measure is workers. And you can convert through that. But if you have a stock in that, is this sort of a natural boundary of what a subsystem is and isn't based on the units of measure?
My understanding when it says conserved flows, this means the flows don't go into the cloud. You have two stocks and there is flow between them, then the units, both stocks should be the same.
Could you have a stock in a subsystem that doesn't have the same unit of measure, but it is converted appropriately. So are you are subsystems identified by processes that sort of say this is a logical grouping, or should they be strictly identified by the boundaries of where that unit of measure exists? And when you convert it, you should be explicit that you're going into another subsystem.
Maybe thinking bring down. But if you remember, for example, the rework cycle, there are a bunch of stocks connected by flow, but it's a closed system. Then it's always a task that is floating between work to do, to work done, or to work that needs to prepare.
But on that same model, there's a stock of workers, which are measured in people. Does that mean, though, that even though it's depicted on the same screen, those are two subsystems?
There are two subsystems.
Okay. So this is
because it's not closed system. He said it is not a conserved flow.
Yeah. So that's the question I have: is when we model, should we be distinguishing our subsectors based on the units of measure and not necessarily just what might make sense as a grouping? So good question and good dialogue. 9.4 it talks about information now and how it's not a conservative flow. Information is not depleted by use. It is not subject to the conservation laws. Information can be transmitted to another point without destroying its existence at the source. So here now, obviously stocks are conserved. They must move back and forth. But information, and in this case what he's talking about information is those auxiliaries that exist between rates and affect change and can be affected by stocks but themselves cannot affect stocks. This does not need to be conserved. And this may be the tissue that ties together subsystems that have different units of measure. And I think this gets to this question of when you're building a model and selecting, like, what sectors do you use for that red box and I think, or how do you put them on different screens and Vensim? I always approach it sort of as a topic. I would say in the ISIS model it might be militant recruiting and losses, but it has several different stocks of units of measure in that screen. When we model, should we be more careful to identify that the subsystems are only those that share the same units of measure? So only things that have people or militants should be in the same area, and then it should identify to something else when that may be weapons or other things that are different unit of measure. Does that make sense, or do I need to draw it?
I get it, but I don't think the sector needs to be defined by the units of measure. It can be as small as a subsystem that shares the same unit of measure, but it can also be larger.
So a sector could have multiple subsystems.
Yeah, I think so.
So really this is more of a logical distinction that a subsystem is those stocks within a sector or model that share the same unit of measure and interact between them.
Yeah. Maybe we can put Said. I think what he's talking about is conserved flow.
We're drawing on the board right now. Definition of subsystem.
These stocks, four stocks, should have all the same. That's a subsystem because that's a conserved flow. There is nothing going.
So if I had, right, and I guess this gets to the definition of I understand the conserved flow. I'm just more thinking of when you're modeling and constructing it. What if you put a stock in there that has a different unit of measure and it converts to feed in that? Is it by definition now in a different subsystem that happens to interact with this subsystem?
There is something coming from outside.
Yep.
If it is feeding into people, it has to be. Or if there is a co-flow.
Well, there may be a co-flow, but yeah.
There is a co-flow. This is people that you have a convention.
And I guess, and I don't know if this is, are we displaying the screen on there?
You're not displaying it, but
so
we
my
can.
question, and put this on the screen so folks can see what we're talking about. So what Rafat's done here is marked a conservative flow between four stocks where the information is conserved or it goes in or out from the sink. And all four of these share the same unit of measure. So we can talk about this by foresters as being at least subsystem A, because all of them share the units of measure. The question now comes, if there is a different co-flow, that let's say this is people feeding into this, and this might be dollars or something, salary, something that is converted, is it appropriate to call this also sub A? Or should this, even if it's by itself, be identified as some different subsystem like sub B or C? And that it's sort of a semantic question, but it gets to whether there is really a formal definition of a subsystem, which is all stocks that share the same unit of measure are by definition in a subsystem, and stocks that are in different units of measure by definition are in a different subsystem. Now you may put them all on the screen, but that's new to me, is this kind of formal definition of what a subsystem is.
I think it makes sense to us for a beginner to be able to grasp this.
Right. I think also back to like a complex model that has a lot of stocks on it, even if it's one sector, I think we often see them described in subsystems that tend to group the units of measure together logically. I think it just flows with that, so it's probably a good practice to be in. Again, so now that was the discussion on 9.2 and 9.3. 9.4, the information between the stocks need not be a conservative flow. And I think this is kind of what connects the subsystems together, to this information going back and forth between the subsystems.
Information.
And this is number 9.4. It doesn't need to be conserved. But there's a key point in 9.5 is that information links connect levels to rates. Information links are the only inputs to rate equation. Now this is interesting because in some models we'll see as a first order control mechanism a rate going into a stock and then the stock going back into the rate to make sure it doesn't exceed the value of the stock or doesn't deplete to negative values in the first order control. Is that one of those situations though where there really is a intervening information flow? We're just simplifying it for modeling purposes and not depicting it. I think this gets to Forrester's belief that each one's feedback should be explicitly talked about, and if this, I remember from the video, you could not have a stock go directly into a rate without an intervening information auxiliary.
So, just to make sure we understand this.
Are you broadcasting?
Yes, I
Okay.
So if this is a stock, this is the flow. What he's saying is that that's the rate. It's controlled by the stock, correct?
He actually says information links connect levels to rates. Information links are the only inputs to rate equation.
Yes. So that's the link connects a level to a rate. And this is the only link to a rate.
So we know levels cannot affect level.
Yeah,
And
so
rates,
impact the rate.
but does you need to have an auxiliary to make that information? It's because he says in 9.1, if we look at 9.1, he says auxiliary variables are only in the information. So an auxiliary variable is a subdivision of a rate equation that must lie in an information link that connects a level to the rate. So when you draw that and have the stock going into the rate, is there an implicit auxiliary lying in between them? Or does the level of the stock become the auxiliary that's the input to the rate equation? And what I'm trying to tease out here is sort of the building logic of how, according to this, the principles of how models should be constructed. I think we all might use that shorthand for first order control.
You need to. Saeed, do you have any comments?
He's only watching YouTube, so he will be like, I asked him to do
So we're going to
Let's just pause.
Pause and give people a chance to catch up.
Yeah. Yeah, he's writing on Messenger. Can you read it, please?
I think the meaning of auxiliary variables has changed nowadays.
What is the new meaning? Because this may be a situation where it's been sort of superseded.
They can contain smooth functions that are basically stocks. Levels.
So this means this is the short path. The longer path is that it goes to a variable that could go to another range, and this can go back.
And that's how we're doing short.
Yeah, so that's the short link, but it can go throughout the whole feedback, but it doesn't go from one level to a level. It goes through a flow, and that's what makes this, despite how large. So this is the short path, the first order control. You can have a larger control, but you don't have a level controlling a level directly. It has to go through a flow.
Right. Levels cannot control levels. Rates cannot control rates. They have to go through information links.
Yeah. So that's short way and the long way.
So you said they can also include very abstract formulations like in tables of systems.
Right, so you could put a very complex equation in an auxiliary that it itself actually is its own model. That might be an economic model or something like that. I guess the best practices that we've been taught is to break that up as much as possible to make it visible so that you don't have a multi-term equation. But there's nothing that keeps you. I've certainly done it where you have 5 or 6 terms in one variable. And that can sometimes get a little tricky to debug too if it's acting out because you can't see what's going on there. Good point, Saeed. So the next one, decision rates only based on available information. This is kind of has grown to be called the Baker Rule. I think by the time when this was formulated, Baker was not yet the Secretary of, or the Chief of Staff and the Secretary of State for Bush and then Reagan, or Reagan then Bush. 9.6 decision rates only based. This is basically the true system levels can only be altered by processes within the information network when that information becomes available to decision makers. I think this is one of the things that really distinguishes system dynamics from a causal nature from other models, that you can have adjustments happen before an information is conveyed. This is a key aspect of delays in the system. So if we have a delay that we're hiring workers, and there's a delay to hire workers, and that delay causes them to come into us so we don't realize we have enough workers until we've overshot our goal, that's the key element of the decision. We can't decide not to hire workers on some magical abstraction that doing a quick math and say, well, we have enough workers, but the information hasn't come to us yet. We have to be very explicit in modeling the Baker Rule, which is entities in the system only know what they.
What is Baker Rule?
The Baker Rule is James Baker was famous for saying, what did they know? And so the Baker Rule is if you're modeling, for example, hiring decisions, the hiring manager does not have an instantaneous equation that tells him he's reached the perfect level. He only has the current hiring rate. He has a goal. There's some information delay between how his hiring rate is reaching that goal to the point where by the time he gets the report, maybe a month out, maybe several weeks out, they may have hired more workers than they needed and overshot the goal, and that's what requires the adjustment back. I think this also applies to non-personal things in that you have to reflect a realistic system. In my ISIS model, I have barrels of oil becoming dollars through black market sales. Well, I can't have ISIS gain dollars and make a decision on those finances until the oil has been sold, the time it takes to delay, the money gets to ISIS Central Command, as it were, and they make a decision on it. They don't know that they've got money coming in. I mean, they're making estimates, but they don't actually know what's going on in the system. Elsewhere. This is where I got the term connecting tissue. Principle 9.7 is only information links can connect between conservative subsystems. Information about levels in one system can control rates of flow in a different subsystem. So here he's expanding on this concept that the logical definition of a subsystem is only stocks with the same unit of measure, and the only way they're connected to other subsystems with different units of measure is by information links.
Saeed says his comment was about 9.6.
Okay.
This are only based on available information.
Go ahead.
So I'm just reading. Does it mean that we cannot use probabilistic formulation? There is a delay of layers.
So that's a good question. This comes up in agent-based theory, which is the criteria. If we're going to use a probabilistic-based formulation, does the agent have access and use that probabilistic formulation, which may make sense. The hiring manager's not going to just rely on what the wind tells them. They're going to have equations and reports and charts, and those can be reflected. But for example, if we have truly a noise seed creating some sort of random event, we can't have the system acting on what it anticipates the probabilistic outcome of that random event would be. It has to react to what that event caused. I think that's what Saeed's getting at. Is can you have a probabilistic equation that the actors in the system don't actually know about and have them react? I think the answer is no.
But for example, back to your example, they got the oil and they're waiting for the revenue, but they have a probability of 90% that it will be sold and they will get it. So they can make the decision because they don't want to wait for the money until they make the decision. They make the decision, the money expected.
Right. So this is where I would model very carefully and see, does ISIS actually use those probabilistic estimations and not assign to them what they do? Because in the research, actually, what they do is manage it differently. They manage to have no more than $250,000 on their account at any one time in these Emlite districts. So what they manage is actually to flow down. They try and spend money to only have $250,000 on hand, and that's how their decision rules are based, is off that no more than that threshold. So as money comes in, they push it out very, very quickly. They don't really know what's going to come in because they don't have a good, like you said, a tracking. But if you're doing a Fortune 500 company, you could have a modeled system that represents their forecasting based off a trend or a smooth or something like that, and then they can react on their forecast estimate because it's something they actually have access to.
So that's a probabilistic, correct?
Right, but it's something that we have verified exists in the real world that people actually use. One example I would give from working in major corporations is that a lot of companies say they use sales forecasts to make decisions on. But when you go in and actually look what they're making decisions on, it's not the sales forecast. And so if you model that they're actually making decisions on the sales forecast, you're modeling what they want to do, not what they're actually doing. And that might create a difference in what happens.
So people aren't using the
Very frequently they are not. Almost, I would say 80% of the equations and formulas used in business are never used to make a decision, even though that's their intention. The information's either not available, it's buried, it's misunderstood, it's discounted because it didn't work last time. A lot of people, there's a lot of heuristics in decision making, which is why sometimes I think we model a very simple decision-making rule because it's a heuristic. I'm short workers, I'll hire some more until I feel like I'm about right. But it's always scary to me how little data is being used in business. I've yet to see, well, I shouldn't say that. I've seen optimization formulas, but for the most part, I haven't seen them being used in the ways that they're often described in the research.
It's comforting to have this. Like we've done studies with data, so that they sit on the table sometimes just to defend if something's screwed up, of course. But the decision,
I would say it's very rare. Now they may pull from like a magazine, but it's very rare for them to have a journal reference for something they did. They've either created it in house, and maybe the people who created it are pulling from the journals, or it's something that's created in. It may vary too by industry. But one example I'll use of a firm that used utilization as a management tool, which is the hours worked divided into the hours available for full-time employee. And they had a huge reporting system designed to manage utilization. The problem was these were all full-time employees and no one would ever get fired. So it was more of a game of allocating their hours to hit that number than it actually reflected what people were working. I could work 60 hours a week and I'd report 40, or I could work 30 hours a week and I'd report 40 because I know the measure I'm supposed to report is 40. And all of a sudden, these games kind of arise in utilization that are sub-optimizing the overall thing to basically hit this magic utilization number. And they're not using it necessarily to manage it. They're not firing someone because of low utilization. It's very interesting to dig into what data is used and what is useful. But I think getting back to this connecting tissue concept, I like this concept that subsystems are logically and formally defined as sharing stocks that share a common unit of measure. What connects two subsystems of different unit of measures are these information links. And these information links are actually elements of a rate equation that have been broken out to make it more visible and easy to understand, which helps in sort of educating stakeholders. Conversion coefficients, so principle 9.8, conversion coefficients exist only in the information. Information links usually require conversion coefficients to change units of measure between different conservative subsystems or to create a 1/time conversion of a level to a rate. Conversion coefficients exist only in the information link, which is between the levels and the rates of flow. This is just extending that concept that if you're going to have cross subsystems that have different units of measure, you have to have a coefficient. So in the I6 example, barrels of oil is in 1 unit of subsystem, and the finances are in dollars. And so to convert that, we have to go from barrels of oil to some sort of sales function that is price per barrel of oil, and then we divide, barrels over barrels, and we end up with dollars. And dollars is what goes into the finance subsystem, and those are handled by conversion coefficients in the model. Do we have a question? The next one is kind of tricky, right? Principle 9.9, conversion coefficients identifiable within the real system. This is another hallmark of system dynamics where you're not sort of supposed to fudge the numbers to make them work. You should only use conversion coefficients that are should not be used merely to correct the units of measure, nor are the abstract values derived only from a statistical analysis. So you shouldn't use a coefficient measure that's sort of a regression-based thing that hasn't been verified to exist. They should be relatable to the actual process in the real system and should have numerical values which can be deduced from observation of the associated system levels. Again, I'm more familiar with ISIS, so an example there is I had foreign recruits coming in as 1 unit of measure, and they needed to become squads, because ISIS conducts actions in squads. So to do that, they had to have a coefficient of a training camp, and a training camp produces a squad for so many recruits over so much time. I don't know actually how long a training camp takes, but I was sort of able to deduce about how long it might be based off a bunch of different information, so I put that in. I think what he's saying here is you shouldn't have foreign recruits come in and magically become squads through some sort of statistical analysis or things like that, like a 3-to-1 conversion. They should actually go through the flow of accumulating and adjusting.
Maybe not necessarily this, but I think if there is a number to convert them from number of people joining to a squad, that, for example, if each squad consists of 10 people, then you divide 20 by 10, you have 2 squads. So this number makes sense.
Right.
It's not just a number that doesn't have a meaning.
Right. And in the research, I found that their squads range from 7 to 14, so I picked 11 as an average. But that's important that I didn't just say, well, 100 or 2. You have to find some measure that makes sense.
I don't know what this is, but Said asked what the Cobb-Douglas production function.
The what?
Cobb-Douglas, that's the production function in economics. Can you elaborate more, Said? He can put himself on voice because we have no problem with his microphone. No.
Looking at it, I just looked it up at Wikipedia real quick. It's the total factor of productivity times the labor input times the capital input, and then there are exponents that are sort of output elasticity. So this isn't, I think, what he's saying is sort of an abstracted equation that is good at sort of arriving at values for total production, but it's basically just saying, take your people, take your dollars, take your productivity, take 2 other things and multiply them together, which would be like taking stocks and multiplying together. Your dollars in your stock, your people in your stock, a factor of productivity and multiplying them. I think what Forrester is saying, and this may be the question Said's getting to, is show those moving. How does labor create productivity? It's got to be people at work or people widgets per person is a productivity coefficient, and it's got to work through that as opposed to just being multiplied out in a formula. So I don't know if that answers your question, Said, but that's a good example of, I think, an abstract formula. that. We got you, Sage. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm talking actually about point 99, I guess. So it is basically saying that
9 9. We are.
sorry.
Oh yes, yes, 9 9. Yes.
Yeah, it says that conversion coefficients should have real counterparts, right? So, but we have so many classical models that use abstract production functions or other kind of functions that use very abstract coefficients or parameters that have no real counterparts. So, what about those things?
I would suggest that you have to. This happened in the combat simulator. Most combat simulators used by the Army are force ratio comparisons. They say the attacking force is 3-to-1. The outcome is this. It's just a comparison of ratios, kind of like your Cobb McDouglas thing here. It's a function and a formula applied to force ratios, and they get an outcome. What we had to do, or I had to do to make that more real in system dynamics, is show the endogenous inputs that made up those pieces are coming from elsewhere in the model. So the number of troops and the types of weapons they're having and the types of things could then be scored into sort of an abstract, but they're coming from somewhere. And then the conversion or the actual formulation itself occurs only after each real-world input is identified and tracked by a stock.
Yes, you are saying that those actual parameters are coming from somewhere. Where? This principle clearly says that abstract values derive only from statistical analysis, should not be in the model. So let me give you another example. So all of us use graphical function, right? In our model. So what is a graphical function? If you want to translate that graphical function into a mathematical formulation, they're basically subsystems. They could be a very complex mathematical formula, right?
Yeah.
And those should use some parameters of coefficients, so multipliers, whatever, right? And which may have we can always decode all these complex subsystems into very detailed models that have real world counterparts. But then you will end up with
But I think that's kind of where he's getting to is that at some level of aggregation, you should represent where they come from, how they change, and how they come together. For example, in the model you gave of the Cobb Douglas, productivity, nowhere is productivity determined by management decisions. It's sort of an output of taking labor by capital and multiplying it by productivity, but it has no influence.
That's exactly my point. But you need to decode that. You need to break it down to more details if you want them to be meaning. So that's exactly my point. I'm not saying that these parameters have no place in the real world. They are coming from the real world. But if we want to show it that they have a real counterpart, the model will expand significantly in terms of size.
And I think that's definitely true because my model to do this combat simulator alone is something like 50 to 75 equations. You've taken terrain, it's got to pull terrain from it. But I think the question of, from a boundary discussion, is what you're modeling relevant and maybe on a sensitive feedback loop? Is it on the feedback loop that's going to be the dominant switching between a positive, negative feedback loop? And therefore, is it critical to model these out fully, or is this a ancillary or supporting element? And that gets into your validating your boundaries. Have I made good boundary selections of breaking out things that are really important and showing them, or maybe aggregating or extracting things that are less important and maybe not as sensitive in model performance?
Are we expanding the discussion because he's talking about convergent coefficient for units of measure. Aren't we drifting away on what he's saying? He's just maybe saying if you have to convert to unit, then your unit convergence should be meaningful. That's it.
Meaningful, but also actual process. I'm sure these equations are meaningful.
Excuse me, we are talking about principle 9.9,
Yes, that's what I'm reading from.
So that says that conversion coefficients should be identifiable within real systems.
Yeah, not merely to correct the units. Not merely to correct the units of measure. The objective is here is to have unit consistency, but for unit consistency, what you use should have a meaning, not only a number to make the units work out.
And I think tying this back to the logical framework, the reason conversion coefficients, I think, does expand is if we start with the definition that all stocks in a subsystem share the same unit of measure. Any stocks then that therefore have different units of measure are by formal definition in different subsystems. The only way those subsystems can interact with each other is through an information link that has a coefficient conversion. So in a way, I think it does expand very quickly. As soon as you have a model with more than one unit of measure, this probably becomes a very important factor because you're switching between subsystems, and it's got to be a real process. As much as I think the model boundary says, indicates.
Yeah, that's totally true. I agree with you. Yeah.
Well, great discussion.
And I think coming from this, I almost want to go back and make like a dummies guide that sort of distills this down and says there are stocks and there are flows, and that's it. And then we can get into breakout of constants and auxiliaries and things like that. All stocks are the same unit of measure in subsystems. Right? Stocks with different unit measures are in different subsystems. The only way to talk between those is through information flows. The information flows, you can kind of build a way of constructing a model that's a very logical, rigorous, but it's hard to get from this because the outline format of this is not how we build models. It sort of takes the principles you need, which may be how we laid them out in the books, but doesn't necessarily bring them to how you might create them in a model. What do you think, Saeed? Is that fair?
Yeah.
So this is the last of this principle 9, and now we're on the last principle, which is 10. And for those who were not here last week, Professor Saeed indicated it seems like 10 kind of drops off. And what we're at here is a transition point between subsystems. As it were, principles 1 through 9 deal with structure of models. And these are the principles of structure. When we begin with 10 and carrying on into the thesis Professor Saeed mentioned last time, we're getting into behavior of models, how structure drives behavior. So it's almost as if we should say 1 through 9 are the principles of structure, and 10 through n whatever are the principles of behavior of the models. And I just want to, this was not my idea, this was Professor Saeed's, but I want to bring that up because it seems like we kind of make a jump here, and then it drops off. I'm indicating that this paper sort of is picked up by another scholar's work in a different volume that may bear distilling these principles. But to start with, we have a first order loop, the simple 10.2-1 is the forced order feedback loop always exhibits an exponential time shape. For positive feedback, the positive exponential diverges from an equilibrium value. For negative feedback, the exponential converges on the equilibrium. So this is where we have positive feedback loops with exponential growth in either direction, and we have negative feedback loops, which are sort of exponential approach or decline into a target. And a first order is simply any feedback loop with one stock identified. Now, the reason this is, if I can remember correctly, is that with only one stock and one rate of change, it is not possible to create anything other than a smooth curve up, down, or approaching. You can't have a curve adjust its behavior because you need to have some sort of accumulation elsewhere in the system for a momentum to adjust itself, which is why these first order behaviors are sort of very simple behaviors of simple curves. Then he goes on to say in a first order loop, you should have a time constant.
Should we draw something?
Yeah, let's draw some loops up here. Here, let's.
Christine, can you turn the laptop to the... Oh, thank you so much.
So, what is meant by a first order system is anytime you have a single stock affected by a flow, right? and this may come from a cloud that's outside the boundary, and you can have it go through many parameters and auxiliaries, but ultimately, because it comes back in on itself and adjusts its only ability to adjust is in the momentum it was going, and this is determined based off whether these are positive or negative polarities. It's a positive feedback loop or a negative. It's not, when they say the exponential behavior, the only behavior this structure can form, I don't know if this is over time, right? If it's a positive feedback loop, it can grow. Positive, and this may be the equilibrium. If it's a negative feedback loop, it'll approach over time. So you really have, and you can do up and down, you can do both sides of the equilibrium, but you really have very limited curve shapes. And the other thing that's, I think, is very useful in this, that at least I found, is if I see this behavior and I'm presented with this reference mode, I know from a modeling perspective I've got a pretty simple task. I really just need to identify what this one stock is and what its intervening variables are. I don't need to worry about identifying multiple stocks. So this is a, we got one. This is first order. This is a first order feedback loop, and the orders are based off the stock. So the next one is a exponential time constant of the reciprocal of the multiplier that defines the rate and break of the level.
So what are you looking at? 10.2?
10.2-2. I think what they're saying, the exponential time constant of a first order loop, so the doubling period is going to be the reciprocal of the multiplier that defines the rate in terms of level. So your doubling period or your halving period that defines this exponential growth is going to be reciprocal in some fashion of what comes through this rate. Because if you think about it, if this is, say this is a simple compounding growth, and it compounds at 10% each time, its doubling period is going to be relative to how fast. If it's 10% every day, then you can assume that every 10 days it's going to double itself. And that's what I think they mean by the reciprocal. So if this is 1 over 10, and then and it's a positive feedback loop, the doubling period up here will be 10 days. I believe that's what they're saying. I'm trying to do some mental models on the fly in my head, so don't quote me on that. So 10.2-3 is higher order positive feedback loops show the same behavior. So really, as long as you've only got positive feedback loops, let's say I've got another stock here, right? So now we're in a second order stock. And this is coming here, and maybe this affects a co-flow or something like that. As long as all of these loops are positive in some way, and then this one maybe affects up there. All of these are positive loops. You will always have, so you could have a second, this is the first order, this is the second order. You could have a 5-order system. It's only going to, if it's all positive loops, it's only ever going to produce exponential growth or exponential decline. It's never going to produce a different behavior. Which begs the question, why are you modeling 5 stocks if one will produce pretty much the same behavior? There may be a point accuracy element, but it's kind of getting into how many stocks do you really need to make this behavior. You need 1. If you put 5 in there and it's all positive, you still get the same behavior. 10.3 is simple second order negative loops and the sinusoidal oscillation. So if this stock down here is a balancing feedback loop. So now we have a positive feedback loop here and a negative feedback loop here. What this is, think about, is this is a stock that is going to go up or down, and it's aiming to a goal determined by the feedback loop, the balancing feedback loop. So what this behavior is going to be in a second order negative feedback loop is there will be, this is time, there will be some sort of goal that is established by the second order. The second order is adjusting to a goal. And the behavior then of this is going to either be, it comes up and approaches, it overshoots and settles, it can never oscillate. It can only, it cannot sustain an oscillation, I think is what it is. Or no, it will overshoot and undershoot. It will actually be, excuse me, it will never settle. It will never attenuate. That's the third order. So what is here is that because, think of these as memories in the system, right? This knows where it wants to be, second order. This knows whether I'm adjusting up or down. But there's no third stock here that can say we've hit it or sort of having a damping effect. If this is me adjusting the shower in a second order feedback loop, I can either turn it hot or cold. I can never adjust it to 0. And that's why a second order behavior is a steady oscillation that doesn't end. Is I think what he's talking about the sinusoidal. It's when you get a third order stock that creates a damping, which is the it absorbs the error. So somewhere over here, a third order negative loop.
He's suggesting how to calculate the period.
Right, the periodicity of
this sinusoidal.
And then the third order is simply. And this is a great discussion of this in 551. That is does a lot more, but if there's a so a third order negative feedback loop can actually attenuate or it can explode and kind of go off in different directions. It basically can continue the behavior and adjust it in interesting ways. So, and I don't know if it gets to all those. Those are the third order. I think third order and above always have that sort of attenuating or exploding oscillation behavior.
He's talking here about constant periodicity.
Right.
This means sustained oscillation.
Sustained oscillation.
Yeah.
So this is another thing. If you see a behavior mode that is sustained, it's a second order feedback with a negative. If you see an oscillation that damps or explodes, it's at least a third order. So and what I use this in my head is I'm at least looking for 3 stocks, 3 major stocks. Moorcroft describes these as sort of the dominant logic. You've got to identify the dominant logic, and if I see an attenuating or exploding oscillation, I've got to think there are 3 stocks in there, and what is the dominant logic that is picking those 3 stocks or represented? You may break it out in further aggregation, but ultimately you have to have at least 3 stocks because it's that third stock that is the damping function or the exploding function that changes the constant oscillation.
And it gets more tricky when you have more.
Right, so there's a whole, again, 551, but there's a whole section on whether you have fast loops or slow loops, strong loops or weak loops, and what those mean is a fast or strong loop, I think, is a loop which attenuates towards a goal. So if you have a minor feedback loop on there that has a function of sort of adjusting you in, but or maybe it's strong. And there's 4 criteria: strong, fast, or strong, weak, slow, fast, and they have to do with periods of delay. And it gets into a really interesting sort of combination that if you know these formulas, which I have written down, I don't know them off the top of my head, you can actually look at behaviors and start saying, not only is that a third order feedback system, but it's got a weak minor loop adjusting a strong positive loop. And there's almost a matrix you can build, which might be worth putting up, I don't have it today, but might be worth putting up, which shows positive loop, the main first order, the second order, strong, weak, and the interaction between these produce predictable results. And it works 2 ways. One is if you are mentally modeling something, you know about what behavior it's going to produce. The other is if you have a behavior and you're trying to derive a system from it, you can get a starting point of what the system kind of looks like. And they stopped here at second order, so we went on to third order feedback loops. And I'm going to again reiterate 551 because I may be messing some of the stuff, but the essentials I think are correct. So let's pause there for any questions on the principles of structure.
No.
How badly did I mess that up, Saeed?
Not to the extent that you need to leave your comforting room and come and drive here.
Kick down the
Just kidding.
I wasn't expecting to do an improv session on first, second, and third order oscillating behavior. So that's it for the principles. That covers, and again, I think it might be worth, I don't know if there's an outline like this, principles of system behaviors, worth finding that and going over that in a future one, or maybe from this distilling modeling sort of a dummies guide that can be sort of a simple English version, even more simple than this sort of guide that's dummies.
And we apologize about the technical issue that happened last week.
Oh, did it not get posted?
It was posted without voice. That
Well,
sound.
you did.
There was Saeed's voice.
Saeed's voice.
So Saeed made it so we could only hear him.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we are the SD club, not the AV club, so we'll try and work through.
Yes.
Maybe we should make friends with the AV club and get that help set us up. Okay, that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.